Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the
Smarten up.
broadcast.
We said this together. Yes.
So I'm wearing my new shirt today.
Yes, Daryl's very proud of picking up the shirt at our last conference that we went to.
So I identify as a conspiracy theorist, and my pronouns are "told you so." Yes, we were at the conference a couple weeks ago, and one of the vendors was a pastor who had this there, and it was like, put that into my bag.
Because Daryl's felt this way for many years, and here we are. You can actually have it expressed on a t-shirt.
I can. And although I was corrected today on the fact that I'm not I don't identify as a conspiracy theorist. I'm a conspiracy factist. Because it's not a theory. It's there is a conspiracy out there. Honestly. Anyway, welcome to the program where we discuss all things regarding education and parenting, and we do it from a biblical perspective. And we are so excited to be having our special guest tonight, a lady who's been involved with education for a lot of years, and she is very actively involved in kind of what's going on. If you want to talk to someone in the know and you want to go down the rabbit hole, then this is one of the ladies to talk to.
She's a community builder and networker. And we love having her here because she provides so much insight into what's going on today.
Yeah. And so without further ado, we'll invite to the table Brianne Hall. Hello, Brianne.
Hi. How are you guys?
Great having you on. Thanks so much for joining us as you're sitting there chilling in your garden there up at the north side of Toronto.
Yes.
And the flowers are in bloom, and it's amazing.
It's a good day.
Yeah.
It is.
So, I mean, where to even start with you? You are so actively involved in so many things.
Yes.
But maybe you can kind of just give us a brief overview of your background and how you got to where you are today, because I've rarely seen anybody as passionate about education and the well-being of children as you are.
Thank you.
And doing something about it. There's a lot of people out there who are armchair quarterbacks and political commentators and things like that, but you're actually out there on the ground, and you've got your fingers in a lot of pies, probably more than you can handle, but you have a sense of what's going on. You're connected with a lot of people, so share with us a little.
Okay, so I was a teacher for about 10 years leading up to COVID, and when the schools shut down and everybody was sent home, my primary concern at that point was, I taught kindergarten, so my primary concern was that it's so necessary for these kids to connect and have that social construct available to them. So at that point, I had inquired with the TDSB and the YMCA at the time that I was working with regards to how they were going to keep these children connected, and they hadn't set up anything. They hadn't figured it out. They hadn't put in protocols yet. But I had a good rapport with my parents and my children alike, and so I voluntarily started a Zoom meeting on a daily basis in the morning. Started it with some morning good affirmations that we wanted for the day, and goals that we were looking forward to for the day with the children. And then we started projects together, like making sock puppets and putting on a puppet show and things of this nature, because I had to think outside the box and what do people have at their homes and in their houses that they can utilize and still engage with these children and keep these children connected, so they still felt like they had a sense of community in classroom. So that happened, and I finished the school year. I went right to the summer with them every morning. We did that, and I took them through my garden at the time, and we talked about growing plants and what they had at home. It was wonderful, but it was really heart like it hurt, right, to see these kids so isolated and so disassociated from society and stressed because they don't know what's going on, and very scary time. From there, I I looked into, and I didn't go back, obviously, for some reasons, but I looked into teaching outside of the system because I could no longer support a system I didn't agree with, and found a pod network of sorts, through back channels, because I tried to apply online with your regular channels, through your regular working sort of application processes, and everything was engaging the narrative. Oh, we mask children, and we require these vaccines, this and this and this. And so I couldn't get around finding a position inside the educational field, and do what I love to do, and be working with children, without agreeing to, in some way, shape, or form, agreeing to things I couldn't morally or ethically agree with. So I found a pod, and it was sort of new age, and a holistic approach, as they call it, to teaching. And I was teaching there for about a month, and they had monthly educational meetings, where you took the day, and the kids, I guess, were with their parents or whatever for that day, as was agreed upon in their contract. And I took the day and I went to this meeting, and about halfway through that day, I realized that what I was dealing with was not, was also not in line with my morals and my ethics and my principles, and was very scary that these parents were taking their children out of a system that they felt was not safe for their children and not beneficial for their children, and putting them in just another system that is yet not safe and not effectively educating their children. I mean, I'm at loss for words, but you understand what I'm saying. So that put a spotlight on that I really needed to use discernment in where I was going to go with this, and who I was going to work with, and what I wanted for these children, and also put a spotlight on how important, as we, I guess, develop a new way to educate these kids, how important it is to use our own discernment, and to actually sort of, investigate and look into each and every decision that we make when it comes to our choices on how to educate. So that put me in another spin, and I found you guys. And I'm very excited that I found you guys, because, we need people that are focused on morals and ethics, and things that have been lost and have been taken out of education, that are so important, I believe.
Well, and I want to kind of go back to what your experience was with this pod, because the whole concept of pods is fairly new.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so we're really kind of finding our way. And yet what you experience, let's call it for what it was. There was flat out witchcraft going on in this pod. It was occult activity.
Yes.
And the kids were actually being used as the conduits.
That's right.
To bring about these spells and these incantations and stuff like that.
Yeah. And sorry, go ahead.
And that's become acceptable because the popularity of Harry Potter and things like that, where spells have become a natural thing. So I would say, like, a thing that is a popular culture, And so I'm glad you brought that up, because you as an educator, you want to be discerning, but then the reason we're doing the show is because we want to help parents to be discerning as well in their choices. And I know when Darryl and I want to start pods, we have a parent questionnaire and we ask them what they want. And half the time parents have no idea, because they haven't had to make decisions about their child's education in many years now. And all of a sudden they're having to make those. So we want to help.
Mm-hmm.
I recently watched a video with regards to education and people asking the same question, like parents, what is your goal for your child? What do you want them to achieve through their education? And they came up with the answer through their surveys that most parents respond to. They want their children to be successful member of society, to contribute back to society. Well, so what does that look like? And how do we incorporate that into our education? Like there's, I'm always asking questions, right? I'm a learner myself, a life learner, and it's important, right? So, it's not, oh, I want my child to have the best math scores, or I want my child to have the best English essays. It's, I want my child to be happy and successful in life and to move forward. So I thought that was really, I contemplated that statement because I never really had thought about it. And I tend to agree, like, what do we want for your children? We want them to be successful and be happy and contribute to society. So that really put a perspective to me on where I'm going to go forward with how I educate, my children, and then also how I teach.
Yes.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So,
with regard to the pod that I worked at, is that what you were sort of?
Well, I wanted to emphasize the importance of that. We need to be discerning everywhere we turn, because there are going to be what appears to be viable alternatives to what we're trying to run away from.
That's right.
And
so, I mean, worse.
Well, you're running away from the lion right into the mouth of, the python. It's like,
right. And even actually, Brianne, when I started the very first pod, a bunch of families kind of got together and asked me to teach their kids.
Yeah.
I realized that they knew what they didn't want to, but then they didn't really know what they did want. Like they didn't discuss that. So just sitting down and deciding what your values are, what your goals are. And, now we're seeing in a public school system that, the values are being pushed on you, and families are still not being given an opportunity to define those. So I guess we want to help parents to decide for their families, for their children, and make choices because you're only happy if you live according to your values and you find that you're not compromising and going against your.
Yeah. I mean, hence why I'm here doing what I'm doing on a daily basis, because, I have those values and I have those principles, and I'm not willing to compromise them or change them for a dollar amount. Or at the sake or risk of any child. Like that's just where I'm at. And so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. That's great. So talk to us about some of the other things that you've been involved in over the last little while. Because you're very much an information gatherer.
Yeah. Like I said, I question everything. I'm constantly learning.
You drove your mom nuts, didn't you?
As a child.
Yeah.
And now your husband.
All my teachers. Because they're always had questions, right? I was always like, well, what about this? And isn't this a better way? And so Yeah, I've been actively involved. I don't know if I know you guys know, but most maybe your viewers don't know. But there is a petition going around Ontario pertaining to our education and what's going on
Mhm.
within the system, um, and it's essentially a petition in hopes to help parents financially afford alternative educational avenues. So I have been actively involved in that, and I've been going around to the general public because I feel like people that are already in the know or already understanding what's happening. That's an easy sell. That's an easy buy. But it's the ones that aren't connected with the people that I'm connected with, or connected with you, or connected with people that have solutions, that have no idea that like where to go, what to do with their children in September, are just as furious, as upset, are just as concerned about their children and their children's well-being. But again, haven't been aware of there's other options. So I've tried to specifically target that population, and what I found was not what I expected. I expected to be get a lot of feedback, or a lot of pushback, and a lot of angry people, and what I got was a lot of thank yous, and a lot of keep doing what you're doing, and keep pushing, and thank you for helping, and keep up the hard work, and I'm so glad you guys are doing this. And so that was kind of a shocker to me. And then the other thing is that I found is that 9 out of 10 people that I approached had no problem signing it. They read it, and within seconds they're like 100%. I agree with all of this. I'm signing it. So that was a real eye opener for me, and also very enlightening, and also very encouraging that, the majority of the population that I've spoken to are on the same page, and that there's need for a change. And so hence, I understand why there's so much effort on your part, and so much effort on many other people's part, and players that are trying to create alternative solutions for education. I feel that it's very important. It's hard to organize. I mean, essentially, there's a group of us that are trying to start a new way to educate our children from the ground up. So I realize that is tasking, and it takes a lot of energy, and a lot of effort, and a lot of time put forward to make it happen. But it is necessary, because the alternative is very scary.
Yes, and thank you. And just kind of to address the petition, because we have been homeschoolers for about 7 years now. And I remember, and I know why the petition's there, because I remember when we first started homeschooling, I would sign up our son for, let's say, a gym program or something, and then I would be able to take my expenses as a homeschooler and the different programs that I had my son in, and then I was given a tax credit for that.
Right.
And in the last couple of years, my accountant has said, you know what, you can no longer write that off even as an expense.
Wow.
And so I know that one of the reasons the petition exists is because not only is there no financial help, but our expenses for enriching our children's experience and education is no longer acknowledged by the government, and we can no longer get that tax credit for it.
Yeah.
And so with everything else that we're dealing with, inflation,
job losses because of people refusing to participate in things
and then
in work.
You've got the carbon tax that keeps going up, because now he's taxing the tax and stuff like that. And now just this week, we just found out that He's now investing, what is it, $1
Our
million?
prime minister, he
Or-
Daryl even
yeah.
calls him just he.
Yeah.
It's
He
I
who
think we
shall
all
not
know what
name.
I think we all know who you mean by when you say he.
Yeah.
No secret.
For our U.S. folks, it's not Biden. It's actually
Oh,
Trudeau.
fair enough. Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
JT.
Yeah,
Okay.
So no, but I mean,
100 million,
one-
about $100 million.
I think it was $101 million and change.
Yeah,
That-
so $101 million are being designated to ensure that, how was it phrased, that hateful parents who do not support
the trans agenda.
the trans agenda are going to be marginalized and kind of removed as an influence. I don't even know how to phrase it, but
Yeah,
that's the objective,
So
correct?
$100 million of our tax money is going
to fight
to
against us.
organizations
To fight against us
to
as
fight
parents.
against us as parents who don't believe in the unreality that they're
Indoctrination, yeah.
presenting. This
Yeah.
is the stage that we're at.
Yeah.
And, we can't emphasize it enough that if you are sending your kids to public school, you are damaging them for life. Guaranteed. There is no way around with the level of abuse and indoctrination that's going on in the schools that they're not going to come out warped and twisted.
Well, and I mean, and not only that, like as a person and a teacher that's been in the school system, when I was leaving, they had already been understaffed. The schools were like the classrooms were overpopulated, and as within my 10 years, the amount of people or children, that had special needs that or challenges that they needed to overcome was growing exponentially by every year that I was teaching. So,
Right.
the first year I would teach maybe at C1. By the time I was gone in a class of 30 children, there was at least a minimum of 8 children that had, and maybe not diagnosed, but had needs that required more attention and more care and more one-on-one, and that was just not available for them. And so, you're focusing on those children, because if you don't, the classroom may fall apart. But that took away from being able to focus and care for the rest of the 25 kids or 23 kids that were in the class, to the best of the teacher's ability, and no fault of the teacher necessarily, but just because she was overworked. And I've recently got wind that the school board system, I believe Doug Ford had removed 7,000 OCT and special needs positions for next year. So if you think the problem was bad, 3 years ago, it's going into the new school year is only going to get worse. So I mean, there's that to consider as well. And kids are just being left by the wayside because there's just not enough time, care, and attention being spent for the individual child. And that to me was very important. Now, mind you, I didn't struggle with that, but I have a knack with children, so it wasn't necessarily something, but I watched it happen with many teachers and ended up with many extra children in my class that they couldn't handle on a regular basis. So, but without, individuals like myself, because they've let those individuals go, I don't know what to expect in the new year in the school system, and it concerns me and it scares me. And we're not even talking about the indoctrination and the nonsense that they're putting in the school systems currently. So and I think that, you know, part of the petition, you know, talks about bullying and what have you, and I really truly believe that that is part of the problem, is that there's not enough supervision, there's not enough oversight by teachers, there's not enough support by teachers for the children, and then not enough support by the, you know, the staff that oversees the teachers, to support the teachers in supporting the children. So, I mean, the cycle continue, right? And it's just going to get worse. So that is a major concern of mine. And I really fear for the children and their future and what's happening in the school systems for many reasons. You know, so yeah. I'm working really hard, and I'm fighting the good fight, trying to help as many people as I can, to recognize, you know, there is alternative options out there. There is other ways in which we can go about educating our children. And the idea of a pod really speaks to me, because I believe that the smaller group numbers, the one-on-one attention that they're able to receive through a pod it will just serve the children so much. And so that for me is like, you know, that excites me. And then, you know, the fact that it also is able to incorporate parents, you know, say, and ideals and what they want for their children and what they see as a necessary thing for them to be educated with, I think is important. And then it also allows that child to shine and show their individual God-given, you know, gifts, because every child is different and every child has those, and some children are phenomenal artists, and some children are great in math, and some children are awesome singers, and some children are very social and great at making friendships and leadership, and so being able to spend that one-on-one time with the child and acknowledge those special gifts that they've been given and nurture them and encourage them is something that I believe it would be more accessible and successful in a pod setting. So, you know, that's sort of where I get on board with a pod and think that this is wonderful.
Yeah. No, there are choices, and we also, though we put pods together, we advocate for parents being involved in their children's education to whatever extent they're able to.
Yeah.
If they can homeschool, we say, because we started off by homeschoolers when, and that was a wonderful opportunity. But then, you know, we saw that there were families that were struggling one way or another, and pod was really a good solution for them, so they don't feel so that they're failing at their child's homeschooling, so they could get help in the community. And actually, I've spoken to people who say, you know what, it's a good thing that people are reaching out to you and asking for help, because in the past, homeschooling was, I mean, you had your tight-knit small communities, but you weren't reaching out for help if you were struggling, because it was just, there wasn't the support really there, because it was such a small movement. and like, just like you, Darryl, and I believe in community building, because a pod is just more than just a place for the kids to develop relationships with one another and learn. But parents also come together and they make that village that we talk about that raises the
village.
children.
Yes. Yeah. And even when I was teaching, like within the school board, and not all teachers are like this, but you know, I took a lot of time to engage my parents and communicate with my parents, and make sure that they knew that I made time for them and had an open door, you know, whatever they wanted to approach me on, you know, they could. And I built some strong rapport with my parents, and that was really important to me, because, you know, I don't want to be teaching a child one thing and they're going home and everything that I'm teaching is being, you know, the opposite is being told. It's important that the teachers and the parents and everybody is on the same page, so that we're moving in the right direction and the kid's not conflicted. You know, this is how it is here and this is how it is there. And you're going to see that if you're going into the school system now and the things that they're teaching, you know, at home, let's be real, or sorry, at school, let's be realistic. They're going and spending 8 hours a day at a school, and they're coming home, and you get maybe an hour over dinner time to unteach or to correct, your personal principles.
Mhm.
And nowadays, like, I mean, my best friend, she's a single mom, and she's got a full-time job, and because of the way that the economy is going, she's had to take a second job. So how is she spending any time with her children, and teaching them and engaging with them and guiding them in the direction that she wants? So she's relying on the system that is broken and is false and is not aligned with her values. So I think making that choice as to where you educate your child is so important.
Yes.
More than ever, parents have to take responsibility for that, because the consequences of a wrong decision nowadays are catastrophic. Your kid literally can come home missing body parts.
Yeah. No,
I
and
mean, that's where it's gotten to, and so not being
without
involved,
knowledge, which is crazy.
well, yeah, and that's the big thing.
Yeah.
And do you find, as you're talking to people, that there's still parents who don't believe that it is that extreme?
Yes, and I also find that a lot of new parents, like as I said, I've been talking to people regarding the petition, and a lot of new parents that maybe have toddlers or 3-year-olds that aren't in the school system yet have no clue, have no idea what's happening in the school system, because they're not at that stage yet where they need to be informed. Now, mind you, I believe that this is also happening in the daycares. It's as simple as going on and looking up job applications for daycare positions, and you read through the application, and it's like, we're inclusive, and we don't disintegrate,
Discriminate.
Not disintegrate.
Yeah, we don't disintegrate. Okay, I'm gonna skip over that word. But we don't, based on their gender or whatever, and it's like, that they're making that statement that agenda and that ideology is being funneled down through to the children.
Right.
So it's very apparent that it's happening within the, like, I haven't been in a daycare in some time, but it's very apparent through just looking at job applications that it is happening within the daycare system as well.
Right.
I am talking to new parents, and they have no clue that this is even a thing.
Well, that's why we invite guests like yourself, because actually we also hire teachers for our pods, and we have spoken to a teacher who's an ECE, has been currently working at a daycare, but looking to transition because into a pod from the daycare, because she said that she has found gender ideology type of books available for the kids in the daycare. So that is toddlers to preschoolers. So it's not only verbally they're saying we're a place that does not discriminate, but there is an education and programming that's happening even with little toddlers and small children. And the fact that there's books like that talk about gender available to this age kids, to me, that's disturbing. And it was to that teacher.
Yeah.
And so she couldn't believe it. And I think parents need to start believing that even in daycares, their children are now being exposed to their children being told that they could dress, if they're a boy, they can dress as a girl, or either way, you can choose this fluidity type of stuff. And you're right. Then the parents are not shaping their child's, because daycare is open for long hours. They're there to help working parents. And parents don't even suspect that it's there, but it is. So that's why we are thankful that people like you, go and talk to parents and inform them. And that's why we have this show where we invite people. And that's why we want you to give us all you know to warn parents.
We have to wake people up to how aggressive this war for our children is. And
it's insane. I'm sorry. it's been, like looking back, it's slow increments. Or it was. It's a little bit more in your face now, but looking back, it was slow increments, and it was, they started with, oh, we're going to be inclusive, and at the time when I was, encouraged to all of these ideals, and they sounded okay to me, like why wouldn't we be? But I didn't really sit back and think about it, because it was just, it was a constant moving forward, moving forward, moving forward. But when you sit back and you actually think about the ideal of teaching kids inclusivity, they already know that. They're already
Yeah.
naturally doing that. They don't, you look at race, and they don't see a race. They see, oh, little Johnny's a nice friend to me. Little Johnny lets me play with his books or his toys or whatever. Or little Mikey's not nice. He's not a kind kid to me, or whatever. They're not looking at skin color or differences or any of that. They're looking at the character of that child, and that's just because that's innate in children, and they don't see it the way we see it. We keep thinking that children are seeing things in the mindset and the likeliness of an adult's brain, and how we've developed, and we've built those social constructs, and we've have those ideals from our lifelong experiences. They don't have them, and they're not forming them for many years. um, you know, Maybe after time, if they have, several encounters with a certain type of person, and they're all negative, maybe they'll form that personal opinion as an adult. But as a child, they're already inclusive. They're already engaging. They don't care, which way the wind blows, for lack of better terms. They care about who's kind, who's nice, who they can play with, who are their friends, what they're learning, how they're engaging with each other. And we need to start focusing on that and lifting each other up. And again, this is all being put on children, that their brains aren't developing. Like they're developing, but they're developing this way because we're forcing those topics. If we weren't
Right.
if we weren't forcing those topics, they wouldn't be thinking about them.
Nope.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, we should help children understand. So, what's a good friend? How to choose a good friend?
Yeah.
So that the children can stand up to bullying, understand bullying is not part of a friendship, and all that stuff. The things that they can understand, the things that they is tangible to them. So. Life skills are really important, and that's not choosing a pronoun is not a life skill.
That's right. And we're also missing a lot of that in our educational system too, right? Like, it's a shame, but there's so many things that we've lost, that if they were taught at an early age, and if they were engaged in these things, would carry them through life, and they would have them for life. But they're not being taught. They're not being acknowledged. They're not being even like seen as important. And so for me, that was also another thing that I really was excited about, when it came to pods, because it was more of what skills are we going to learn today that are at, like, let's garden, let's talk about cooking, let's talk about bees, let's talk about things that were in nature, and things that are actually important in life skills that we're going to need for the rest of our lives. I remember when I was in school, I took a home ed course and learned how to sew, and I realized, like, if everything was to shut down tomorrow, I could actually make an outfit for myself, like I could actually go through, and so these things are necessary, and are not being necessarily engaged. If
Yeah.
you look at high schools, they've removed tech, and they've removed home ec, and they've removed all of these extracurricular parts from their curriculum. Really, like, they don't necessarily, unless you're going to a specialized school for these things, they're not in those schools anymore. So
Yeah. Well, and I guess I come from Eastern Europe, a more traditional way, but the way I learned how to garden, how to do all these things, that's what my family did, but the family had time to spend with one another, had time to pass those skills on. So if the family now is being kept, like you said, because of economical reasons, being kept busy, not to teach their kids these. Yeah, by design, exactly. And then in school, it's not being taught. These children are deprived from like survival skills, really, how to do basics in life. How many young married couples have we talked to when once they got married, it was the first time they tried cooking, the first time they even did laundry,
Right.
and that puts a strain on the family if you have to learn these things
as an adult. Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
I was just talking with my son the other day, and I was telling him that, sometimes I really press him hard on some things. And I keep telling him,
It's
I
for
said,
your good.
I'm trying to discipline you, because if you don't learn these lessons now, if you don't learn to discipline yourself now, so discipline can come from two places, within or externally.
From outside. Yeah.
And if I'm going to make his life easier, I'm going to apply those things now so he learns it, he becomes familiar with it, and he's going to adopt it. Because I said, if you try to learn these things later on in life is a lot less forgiving when you're an adult, and the consequences of your lack of discipline, hit a whole bunch of other people. Yeah. Right now, he's just a young teenager. So the only consequences we have, mom and dad end up having to do a little extra work. You get married and you don't have those disciplines. That's a whole different ball game there, Charlie.
It's funny, Darryl, because I recently had the exact same conversation with my son, because he's
put him in the same room,
right? Just like certain life skills, like, you need to know how to do your own laundry, you need to know how to do the dishes, because when you're out in the big bad world by yourself and you're an adult, no one's going to do those things for you. And so it's you learn those skill sets now, so that when you're an adult, they just come second nature. But these are things, and I mean, I'm just talking about home chores, but these are things that, and if you're not at home to teach your kids this, then again, they just go by the wayside. And that's what's happening, right? We have a society of parents and people that can barely afford to live on two incomes, let alone one income. And we also have a societal construct where they've designed to break down the family unit and the family structure. So you have a ton of single moms and a ton of people that are doing it alone and working hard at it alone, and next to impossible. So then they rely on the system to raise their children, and unfortunately, the system is capitalizing on that and going, haha, we've got them in our educational system and they're ours now. And we've got to say no. We've got to stand up. We've got to say no. We've got to come together. We've got to come together as a community, and we've got to come up with some solutions. Learning pods, homeschooling, whatever it may be, to save these kids from this nonsense. I don't know a better word to describe it. It's utter nonsense. And there's got to be solutions. And I always say, two heads better than one, many heads better than two. Like we're at a precipice where it's like now or never, folks. And September's fast arising. So I'm glad that there's people out there like yourselves that are trying to open up your using your time, your energy, your efforts to reach these parents and help them in any way you can. And I appreciate the two of you and all of the efforts that you've put forward. It means the world to me, because the kids mean the world to me. So.
Well, it's a lonely battle. And when you find yourself in opposition to the system, if you don't have community to depend on, that's not a very long battle.
And how many parents have we met that they say, I hate doing this, but I have to do it because I feel like I have no choice, or and finances is one of the issues, and that's why this petition is so important, because you know, and a lot of parents have asked, okay, so if the public school board loses funding when a child leaves, where
Yeah.
does this money go?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I you know, that the whole point is I'm hoping that it goes back to the parents that need to put their child in whatever education that they can. And why are we, you know, why are we specifically looking at only the public school system and the Catholic school board system? Like, you know,
Right.
why, you know, if I'm you know, Christian, why isn't there an option for me to put my child in a Christian school so that my values and my morals and my ethics are being taught to my child? Like, why isn't that an option? And why should my taxpayer money go to an option that isn't aligned with who I am as a parent or who I am as a person? So that for me struck a chord. And you know, there's many different ways of teaching as well. So that's something that, you know, is also something that should be a choice for the parents. You know, there's many sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Philosophies on how that, okay, for lack of a better word, because there is a pedagogy, I think is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of different methods in which how to teach a child, and parents should have a say in how they want their child to be educated. And you know, at a certain age, I think that's also important to engage your children on, is this working for you? Is this
Yeah.
successful for you? You know, are you thriving? Are you feeling like you're reaching your full potential? And, you know, reevaluating the direction that you're, you know, going with your child to educate them. Also very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is what we say with the pods is we say that the parents are experts at their children, of the children's well-being, and they're knowing their children's character and what their needs are. I mean, who is better equipped to understand that than a parent? And then teachers are expert at education because hopefully they would have, you know, remembered all the different, and I different styles of teaching and different methodology of teaching and addressing different needs and a different type of learners there are and so forth. I mean, teachers have been exposed to all that, right? That's why they've become teachers. And so when a parent and a teacher come together, we think that's a beautiful relationship with one another. And we believe that that's how children will thrive. But, you know, if a school says to a parent, well, you know, what you believe is not acceptable, it's hateful and so forth, so your child doesn't have to come to you, that breaks the relationship that's most important for the children's well-being.
Yeah.
And the trust. I mean, I've attended a few school board meetings pertaining to issues that parents were having within the school boards, and I can tell you that the amount of hoops that parents have to jump through for their voices to be heard, you know, is utterly ridiculous. And then even if they do have the opportunity to have their voice heard, the amount of pushback that they're getting from the board is, or lack of action from the board is utterly ridiculous. And people and parents are at their wits' end because they don't know, you know, what avenue to go through, how to make change, how to address the issues that they have. And it comes from the top down, right? The superintendent tells the principal, tells the teacher, tells the children, and teachers just want their pension and their money. And I keep saying, you know, the teachers that are still in the system, they're still in the system because they didn't choose their bodily autonomy. You know, they didn't put themselves first before their paycheck. And so now we're expecting and we're anticipating these teachers to put the children first before their paycheck, and it's just not going to happen. So that, you know, that poses, you know, another problem. You know, where are they sitting morally and ethically, and what are their motivating drive, what motivates and drives them to do the job that they're doing. And I personally didn't get into teaching and doing this career field for the paycheck, because let's be serious.
Nobody gets rich.
Right? It's not something where I'm going to make millions. But it's something that puts a smile on my face, makes me happy, makes me excited to get up in the morning and do what I do. And so for me, that was so much more important than the amount or the dollar signs that I was getting. But again, that's where your values lie, and not everybody is like that. So,
Yes.
here we are.
Yeah. Now, Angie has a comment about the money. Is we have to make sure the money isn't conditional on anything when the government controls homeschoolers, and that's absolutely true.
Yeah, different provinces have different rules. So the government gives certain money, but then they want balance and checks and so forth.
Yeah. So it is true that we have to be concerned about that, that if we do end up getting the money back to funnel it where we want, the government does not have a say in, wherever we send it. Because,
what do we agree to?
Yeah.
I think I have a personal thought on that issue, and I mean, I could be wrong, but I think that the government already has enough trouble overseeing the schools that are in their care currently, and if you're talking about taking a class of 30 and let's say dividing that into 3 pods, the amount of oversight that wouldn't be needed, and the amount of people hired to perform this oversight would be astronomical. And I honestly don't think that they have the capability or the capacity to do that. They may put general rules on people, but actually following up and overseeing it, I highly doubt that they would be organized quickly enough to have that put in place. That's just my, they already struggle with the school system as it is. So, I feel like that's, well, it is a worry and a valid one. I don't know if
I think it's just something that we
mind,
deal with that when it comes time to negotiations.
Well, because we've been homeschoolers for a while, and the homeschoolers here in Ontario are quite happy that there's no government involvement whatsoever.
Yep.
Though there may be no funding, they're like, at least we can choose. And I think people need to understand that if you want to choose, then you have to make yourself as government independent as possible. That's the bottom line.
No, you're right. You're 100% right. I mean, yes, I understand. And I don't necessarily disagree with you. I mean, we have to do something. And
that's the thing is I think that's one of those details that we can discuss.
Let that not stop us, right?
We'll have our lawyers, and when it comes time to actually getting this deal done, but let's first make sure that there's even a willingness for them to part with the money from their cold dead hands, as it were, because that's the way governments usually act.
Well, I mean, at the same time, and I've discussed this with a few people that are engaged in this sort of the same path that we are, and the government is currently funding each student. I think it's $13,900 and change per student that's going to school. And if you look at the schools, they're 80 years old, filled with asbestos, the pipes, everything, that all of these schools that need upkeep, and the filtration systems and the air conditions and all of this stuff that is not, if school was to privatize, and if school in whole was to go and disperse the way I anticipate it will be very shortly, they would actually be saving money. We would.
They would, and
doing them a favor.
The system's not efficient.
There are a lot of people who believe that Premier Doug Ford, the equivalent of a governor, is intentionally doing this to collapse the system so he can get out of it. But, I mean, that's all speculation. So we got about a minute and a half left. So tell us. So there's a possible strike happening.
What's coming up
this month, and just in a 1 minute.
There's a possible strike happening with the teachers.
Yeah.
I don't know if that'll happen within the month. I think it's going to take some time. There's the Million Man March that I think is happening in the September. There's a lot of talk online with regards to pulling your children and keeping them home. I'm personally not sending my child back, whether I have to teach him myself or whether I have, a pod to put him in, is yet to be figured out, because of the logistics of everything. But I wouldn't recommend children attend school in September. I mean, that if I could leave on any message, it would be keep your kids home and keep them safe and keep them with you until it sorts itself out.
Well, and contact School Pods Canada for a pod in your area, because we'll come. I mean, you're planning on moving up north from where you are now, and as soon as the dust settles, we're getting a pod started up there. We'll do it anywhere in Ontario. We'll do it anywhere in Canada. We're even willing to come down to the States. I was just talking with Wendy, who lives down in Arizona, and she and her husband are thinking
pods can happen anywhere.
We will go wherever need be. So.
Yes.
Brianne, it's been amazing talking to you tonight. You have just, you're doing a lot of really wonderful things.
And thank you for the insights. Like you've thought about all these scenarios and things because you care.
Yeah.
And so we really look forward.
Yes.
And we really look forward to working with you to make the pods concept a success.
Yes.
And so on that note, thank you everybody for coming out and watching Smarten Up. And we'll be back here next Tuesday for another session. Have a great evening and a great week, everybody. And we will talk to you soon.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Bye for now. Yes.
We are richly blessed to bring you what we believe is the fullest, most diverse, yet up-to-date progressive teachings, discussion, and prayer programming you can find anywhere on this planet. Be sure to take the tour of the MessianicLambRadio.com website. I'm Susan Hoogie, thanking you for joining us on the Messianic Lamb Video Network.